Hello and welcome. So, I've taken a break from posting a lot on my channel lately, and so much has happened. I did make a post most recently describing one of the healings that I had gone through, and it was healing something that was stored in my body. And I don't think anyone even watched it, but that's fine. It felt good to start expressing again, and I did say also that I would start vlogging. But the thing about it is that I was using my phone, my spare phone, to record myself, and I cannot lower the quality, and it takes so long to upload that video from that phone recording that it kind of lost interest, because that means that I cannot do any other internet related things while it's uploading, which takes like 6 hours or some shit like that. So unless I set myself up to upload before bed, which also means I have to stop watching what I'm watching before bed, before I fall asleep, get up and start the upload, and then get back in bed. And usually I watch TV until I'm falling asleep. I usually fall asleep, I'll put a specific video on that I don't mind going in the background, whether it be something spiritual or just something very wholesome, because I'm very particular about what I get programmed with. But I'll put that on in the background as I fall asleep. The little bit of sound is a bit of comfort to me. And it's interesting because I've mentioned the modality of human design before, here and there. I'm not an expert on it, but I've definitely dabbled in the knowledge and execution of the knowledge of it since I discovered it, like, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. And it's been fascinating, but one of the things that is mentioned in my human design is that a bit of background noise is helpful for me. And that is for the digestion of information, but also food. So that's interesting. The other thing is I prefer a cave environment. And when I ever came across that piece of information, I was like, wow, that is so interesting, because in the past, let's see, before that, in the past four, I guess always, but specifically in the past like 4 apartments where I've lived alone, I've set them up so that I lived like a studio, even though there was bedrooms. Like, I did not put myself in the bedroom. I set myself up like the bedrooms were storage rooms, and I, I was in the living area. Like, my bed was in the living area. I set it up like a studio apartment, even though it wasn't, you know? And that's because of that cave space that I really enjoy. And so, you know, over the course of finding the knowledge of human design, I have discovered that there were things that really resonated with me, you know, at times made me feel really validated, reassured, you know, even just to like understand myself and understand that that was actually the manifestation of a certain energy that I actually am attuned to. And these are all based on the astrological placements as well as the I Ching, which is the channels of energy that go through the body. So it kind of mashes those things together, and we call it human design. And it was downloaded to a gentleman who has since passed on, I believe, and I think his name might be something like Ra Uhuru or something like that. But like, he is a human being, and he's just a guy who got downloaded with this whole thing and shared it with people. And of course, just because he's the one who downloaded it doesn't mean that he shared everything there is to know about it. It just means that like he opened people up to it, and there have been many others since then who tap into the energy of it to understand it. And it's called an experiment. So, even I am tapping into it in order to understand it. But when I tap into certain definitions that other people have had from their perspectives and they resonate, that feels like one of those juicy hits of like, oh, there's something here for me to look at. Like, oh, this feels like it expands my view. I want to consider this. I want to see what this perspective is and what it means for me and what can I learn from it. And so that's how I sort of approach this human design experiment. And this morning I was looking at Instagram, and in my Instagram feed, by the way, Instagram is basically the only social media that I'm using besides YouTube on a regular basis. I don't interact with other people through Facebook, so if you've tried to message me through Facebook or friend request me or anything like that, you're not going to get me through friend request, but you can message me. I will get a notification of a request of a message, and I will have conversations through Facebook Messenger. It's just that I had stepped away from that type of relationship for a reason, for part of my own, not human design experiment, but like my own life experiment, where I just realized relationships are really important to me. And the superficiality of the relating that goes on Facebook was just turning me off. And I was prepared to be, really transparent and get down into the nitty gritties of humans and relating and acceptance and love for all. But other people didn't meet me there, but they were people that I encountered in my life. So they were kind of this collection of people that I didn't relate to. Maybe in little small ways throughout our time when we had interactions, I related to them on that certain level. But I wanted depth of relationship. I want depth of relationship. That's really where it's at for me. And I think that's why I've been drawn to the work that I do, is because even though it may not be a long-term relationship in some cases, and ideally it's not, but that means ideally for the other. Ideally the other is learning something from me that they apply to themselves and they take along their journey. But there have been some longer term relationships with some people who will grow along with me so that we can interact again and again. And that's been lovely. But basically, those interactions are moments when we go much deeper into what's below the surface and what's at the root cause of this or that or whatever. And sometimes it's just speculations between us, and sometimes it's actual uncoverings and sharing downloads and doing the alchemical work of clearing anything that is a limitation. My eyebrow is doing that thing where one's higher than the other. That's been a thing. That's been a thing. Just is. Just is. Okay, so um, so yeah, I do use Instagram though, and I was doing a bit of scrolling on Instagram, and also Instagram is where I get to see pictures of the newest grandchild that I have because his mom will post pictures on her story. So I get to see, him sometimes there, and I'm always interested in having updated views of the grandbaby. He's, I think, about 3 weeks old now, so it's pretty exciting. If that, gosh, it hasn't been very long. I know that. I think about 3 weeks. So he's just a little tiny peanut still, and he's great. So, anyways, on my Instagram feed, I took a lot of diversions to get to the point, and I'm still not to the point, and now I'm diverting again to get to the point, and I think that's amusing. I don't know why. Okay, if you get annoyed by being amused by the way my own mind works, I understand. Okay, so little things sometimes. Sorry, now I'm just. So, anyways, there's this guy who posts about human design, and he is a projector like me in human design, which is one of the categorizations of how your energy can work on a certain level. So there are all kinds of nuances and intricacies about the human design because, like I said, it's based on the certain energies where they are in the sky when you're born. So it dictates what energy you have access to and what you are learning through and from. And also the channels in your body of where that energy moves and how it moves and what parts of your life it's affecting and things like that. So because he's a projector like me, he also posts a lot of information about that topic, which is the reason why I followed him, because he's mostly sharing quotes from the original guy who downloaded the modality, the experiment. And one of the quotes that he shared this morning was talking about how the where the sun and the earth are in your human design dictates what kind of like life path you have. Mine is the left angle cross of uncertainty. And he went on to say that, but it is through the nodes that you express this. And I thought, oh, I did not know that. That is new for me. I wonder what it says about me, what my nodes are doing in my human design chart. And so this began my quest to research my own nodes in my human design chart. In astrology, I know that my nodes are South Node Taurus, North Node Scorpio, South Node 3rd house, North Node 9th house. And what that means for me in astrology is basically I am meant to be strengthened by the comfort of luxury, right? That's something that I'm comfortable in, of having enough and feeling abundant. And also at the same time strive not to depend on it so much that I cling and hold on too tight to things that I'm outgrowing. That I will be this more fluid version of myself where if the possession is not needed, that I can give it up, that I can, let it go, that I can surrender, knowing that when I do need it, it'll come back. So, something like that, And also that I'm doing this through communication and higher learning. And what I'm actually just getting as a download when I say that is, so this has not as much to do with my physical possessions, although it does manifest there as well, as my beliefs. Shit. That was a big realization for me right there. Just taking that in for a moment. This, by the way, is how it works when I give readings. I'll be talking and then I'll have this realization and download about like what that means for you. And then I get to share that. And it's kind of fascinating because I enjoy it. I enjoy it because I'm not just like blah, blah, blaring about stuff I already know all the time. Sometimes I'm actually like, wow. Sometimes the information I have to give is something I know about and that I've mastered or an expert in. But sometimes it's like, oh, a realization about something bigger that I hadn't even focused on yet in my life, So that's what this is happening for me, myself, right now while I'm talking. And that is one of the benefits of me expressing myself this way, having an outlet to express myself is really, really important for me. So, anyways, the astrology, the nodes in astrology in my astrology chart are showing me that I am. It's kind of like using pieces of information to further myself, to go forward, and then leaving those pieces of information behind when they are no longer useful, right? Like, here's an example. When I started my journey into what I would call my spirituality, because everything's spiritual, basically, everything is energy, and there's nothing that's not spiritual. But when I first became aware of what spirituality is, and that there was a potential to focus on it, and I did start focusing on it, I was discovering knowledge, and then I was experimenting, and I was experimenting with this sort of blind faith. And in experimenting, sorry, I have to put my hair up because I don't know. In experimenting with this blind faith, my results of experimentations was wow, first of all. And I found a lot of success in a lot of different modalities that I tried, including quantum healing. And this is like instant results in healing through moving the energy and things like that, things that are like, wow, to me at that time anyway. And, but then from the level of consciousness I had, wanting that to be the thing that I did going forward for others, and trying to use that as my sense of importance, which it isn't. That's just something I lined up with because there was no resistance in me at that moment to do it. But as I went further in life and said, oh, I'm just going to do that, I was faced with all kinds of other things like, oh, actually, when somebody doesn't want that done, then they can block it. So it's like, oh, here's a new understanding. And because I've now experimented enough and tried it on some people who didn't want it, now I've lost my blind faith. And now I realize that there are people who would actually work against me on something so wonderful as healing, you know? And so I had to leave behind this belief of it being good enough to just operate with blind faith into this understanding that, oh, life is actually trying to teach me something different right now. Life is trying to teach me a bit more about the other. It's not just about my capabilities. It's actually also about what the other is doing and what their purpose is here to do. Because if I take that ailment and a system to heal that from their body, even instantly, that takes away a whole process for them of learning about themselves within the context of that experience for themselves. And who am I to go and do that? Those type of lessons came along, right? And from there, it was like, okay, well, now doubts and fears come in. Fears about, well, what if none of this matters then? And doubts about, like, will I ever find a thing that does fulfill me, that gets me as excited as this did? And so then leaving behind the thought that I even needed that, you know? So these are just examples, or, leaving behind the belief that I need that to go on, that just the process of living isn't enough to be fulfilled in life. Because it can be if you allow it to be, And even if we are accomplishing things, the process of accomplishing them is so much of the process that, of course, it's part of it. Of course, it's a worthwhile, worthy part of it that it shouldn't be ignored. That the destination isn't the whole thing. You know, that the journey, of course, is part of it, and it's the biggest part of it, right? So, like, of course, that's part of the whole that is just as important and to be honored as part of the whole, as part of the accomplishment even. Okay, so I was just trying to show the example of how I've had to leave certain beliefs behind, but while I had the beliefs, I was learning something while having them, right? So it's like, oh, I'm using this, I'm accomplishing this, I'm having these experiences, and oh, all of a sudden, there's something bigger for me to learn. Now I have to operate with this belief. Oh, wait, that fell through. Now I have to expand my awareness to include this belief. And it's kind of like that. So what I'm trying to give a picture of is that these beliefs, as I let them go, it doesn't mean that they were never useful for the time that I had them, or that I was wrong or lying or anything like that. It just meant like that was my capacity at the time. And each time my awareness has expanded, then I have understood a bigger picture view of what it was I was operating in, and been able to step above it to see something even bigger. And all while knowing that what I was stepping into, there was still something bigger than that, that it wasn't everything. And even though it wasn't everything, that I still needed to use it as a rung on the step, on the ladder. And if you don't want to look at it like a hierarchy, like you're like a rung on a ladder, you could even just look at it like a step on the path. Okay, so in my astrology, the nodes have shown me that this transformation can be a way of life, and that it's sort of the most fulfilling thing. It's sort of the most exciting. It's not boring. You know, I don't know if I've been bored more than like 2 or 3 times in the past 10 years. Seriously, I'm so serious. I'm so serious when I say that, you know? Um, and when I have been bored, on the rare occasion, I've not been able to quell it with anything, and then had to realize that, oh, acceptance of boredom, welcoming boredom, being with boredom was actually more exciting than the idea of trying to fulfill that space or fill that space with something else. And it's like acceptance of all, surrender of what is to what is, and not trying to escape or seek or, you know, it's just like being with life. That's kind of what I believe my nodes are talking about in astrology when I look at them there. So then if we come over to human design, where I decided to dig in a little bit deeper today based on the fact that my left angle cross of uncertainty was going to be taking place in the area of my nodes, I thought, okay, let me look at this, right? And now if we just look at the left angle cross of uncertainty, let's kind of say what that is, okay? So I started just using Google, and I did come across some of these sites that are kind of cool. And so I'm using some of them to like research and reference and go back and forth a little bit. But this site is monrk.co blogs. This is a blog by a person posted by Alyssa Webb on August 24th, 2023. The Left Angle Cross of Uncertainty, Human Design Incarnation Cross. So I'm going to read a little bit of what Alyssa has shared, because her share is actually pretty fascinating, and I was going step by step within her share to like study my own chart. And I want to offer this to you as well, because as I was doing it, I was just like, oh, this is exciting. This is fascinating. I kind of want to talk about this so that I can kind of see it. You know, like I shared before, how I get downloads sometimes through expressing. Well, I was like excited enough to want to do that. And this is what I'm doing here now. But let me share what she has said about the left angle cross of uncertainty. It means you are, and this is quoting her webpage, her blog, a unique person with the drive to achieve your personal ambitions, the power to express yourself individually, the need to connect deeply with others, and the intuitive understanding of emotional energy. I mean, yes, you know, as humbly as I possibly can say it, like this makes sense to me, right? You may often feel uncertain about your path in life, but this is because you are meant to forge your own way. You are not here to follow the crowd or to do what is expected of you. You guys know I rail against expectations. You know it's in my teachings if you've been following along. You are here to live your own truth and to create your own reality. And that is exactly what I've been working on in this time that I've been away from posting on the channel. I have been literally shifting my energy to a higher frequency to make the actual changes. It's like I cleared up all the kind of underworld stuff that I needed to clear up in order to like be at one with who I am. And then it was a matter of knowing who I am and then seeing where there were like habits that were actually like hijacking my energy into the old patterns. And then like literally untangling each of those. A lot of repetition, but I know there are other ways to change beliefs, but I've been doing it through repetition because I've also needed to do it at a certain pace. I can't do it overnight. I can't do it over a snap of the fingers. And there are specific reasons for that. And one of them is because as I transform, those that come in contact with me are also able to transform. So if I take a leap out of a certain space, then they're not going to be there with me. And there are some people that I am contractually obligated to be a certain energy for within their view or their space, and that might even be you as a viewer of what I'm sharing. Okay. As we dive deeper into the individual gates, double check the positions of your numbers to help you get a clear understanding of your conscious versus unconscious gates and how they fit into your overall personality in life. Okay, so that's what I decided to do. And up above, she has a chart here, and she talks about how the sun gates work and how the earth gates work, because the sun and the earth gates are what make up your incarnation cross. And my incarnation cross, like we said, is the left angle cross of uncertainty. So one of the gates that I have is gate 8. And now when I talk about all these energies, you may recognize them from things that I've shared and how I've operated. And there may be things that I'm still working on, you know? Let me take a sip of this coffee, which, to be honest, you may or may not know this, but I have cut out sugar. So I'm no longer putting creamer in my coffee, but that was my favorite thing about coffee. But I missed coffee. I drink decaf, but I still kind of missed it. So I replaced it with coconut milk. And coconut milk is very thin. So what I did was I started buying coconut milk in the can, adding a little bit of that because it's mixed with guar gum to thicken a little bit, and then adding coconut milk. And this past week, I decided to try the store brand of coconut milk in the can because it was basically half the price of the one that I was buying. And now there are chunks of guar gum in my coffee. And that is not pleasant. I got a chunk in my straw earlier, and it was like a cakey, flavorless gunk. And so when I go about this coffee, I'm just like, I don't know, torn on whether I should even finish it or tastes slightly burnt. I don't know. That coffee is usually so delicious. I buy the New England company. No, the Vermont company. The Vermont company coffee. It's organic. It's usually so good. I don't know what I did with this one, but all right. What came to mind was coffee, coffee, coffee. You ever watched Gilmore Girls? 'Cause I have a lot. All right. Just dropping in random facts about me. All right. Gate 8, the contribution. You are a natural born leader and innovator. You have a unique perspective on the world and a gift for seeing the potential in others. Yes. You are here to inspire and empower others to live their lives authentically. I believe this is what I have been doing by doing readings, the way that I give the readings. Um, it's actually even shows the nature of my shadow of not seeing people for who they are, but actually seeing them as their potential. That was a huge problem that I had to overcome in clearing out the limitations on myself, which was that I would just go by somebody's potential instead of who they were actually being. And so many, when I can see your potential, and even though you're acting like a dick, it's like, I know that you have the potential. So I'll just focus on that. And at times that really screwed me over. That really screwed me over because some people I've learned will actually dig in and go in the opposite direction of their potential first and maybe never come back. Maybe it's going to take them several more lifetimes to even consider that they're in the opposite direction of where they intended to be or would like to learn about, and it's not wrong because I've talked about this before. I'm going to move this over. I have the baby's little chair here and I have glue. I was doing projects. I'm always doing projects. And sometimes the remnants of the project will be needing to be put away. Here's another project. This one is, I was making a macrame, um, and I just got bored with it. So, that with the project stuff. What was I saying? What was I saying? Hmm. Hold on, hold on. So I felt like that was what I was doing with readings. Seeing people's potentials instead of seeing how they really are. Oh, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong because, in order to master an energy, we do need to know what doesn't work. So some people may be here working on that part of it still, for their soul's evolution, for the enrichment of their soul. I believe I've already mastered a lot here on earth, in other lifetimes. And I'm just basically getting to the point where I can access a lot of that mastery. So it's kind of like these little like mini courses on refreshers. And that's also why it seems like I'm stepping up and growing each time, but like rapidly. And the reason why it's rapid is because I've already done it before in another lifetime. This is just a way I'm opening back up to it. And that's actually what made me want to talk about this because maybe I'll get back to it, but I was reading something about people who are seeking. And one of the channels I have, it's not about seeking. And I was like so resonating with it when it was talking about that. And it's about knowing. And that's so true for me because I remember one time someone assessed me as a seeker. And I think that sometimes spiritual people get called seekers, seekers of the truth or God or whatever. And I didn't resonate with it. And I contemplated it afterwards. And the reason why I don't resonate with it is because I've never been seeking. I've been uncovering and knowing that's what I was doing. It's never been about like, oh, I need to find the person with the truth so they can tell me, if I'm in the right direction or what to do next. It's always been about what's in my way of knowing my own truth? What's in my way of living who I really am? What am I doing that I wasn't realizing that's actually a hindrance to me? That's it. For me, it's like always been in my heart. But I started out before I was aware of spirituality and what that was, and that I am a spiritual being, and that all things are spiritual. I was just in this traumatized state. So I did often look outside of myself for love. It was never for answers, it was for what I felt like I was missing. And it turns out the thing that I thought I was missing, I was never missing at all. It was always inside me. It's been the driving force of everything I am and will continue to be and could never not be. It's just love. And it's like I wanted to see myself outside of me. Back then when I was traumatized. And that makes so much sense, because if you think of trauma, what it is, you're this wholeness, and then you get fractured and fragmented. And that's why you start seeing reflections. If you think of a kaleidoscope, you start seeing reflections, and there's distorted from certain angles, and so you can get glimpses of yourself, but it's never usually, it's not, sometimes, very rarely, it's a direct reflection, but oftentimes there's a lot of distortion in there. But what you see and how you interpret it is the most valuable piece of information for you, in my experience of that. You are not afraid to stand out from the crowd. You are drawn to what is new and innovative, and you are always looking for ways to make a difference in the world. You are a rebel with a cause, and you are not afraid to speak your truth. I mean, that's true. Lately, I've been facing these things that feel so big, that feel like social injustice, and as I look at them and feel into them, I feel so powerless in a way. I know that I'm not, but there's a part of me that had felt powerless. And a couple days ago, I had a memory resurface of a time where I was powerless to injustice. And it was in a work situation. And then I was brought, after I looked at that deeper, I was brought to another situation where I was facing injustice in a work situation. And I was realizing, oh, these are abuses of authority. I've experienced abuse of authority in the workplace. And and then I realized, oh, this is the same feeling I get when I look at this social injustice and I think about having to solve it or fix it or make a difference or explain to people, because people can't see past their own wounding, right? So then I started to see it like, oh, it's my own wounding that makes me feel limited or disempowered by looking at it. And that actually was a breakthrough within the last couple of days, where I was like, oh, yeah, I need to sit with this feeling of injustice, of abuse of authority, of this big thing that's gotten too much power for its own good in some cases, and doesn't know the way to utilize it. That's just fool energy. It's okay. It's not wrong. Sometimes we know what we do want by knowing what we don't want. Sometimes people are an example of what not to do. And the part of me that felt disempowered by looking at that was the same part of me that was disempowered earlier on in my life, because I didn't know myself. I didn't know my capabilities, and I was in this traumatized space of feeling victimized and feeling feeling like there wasn't enough. And so I had unprocessed trauma about looking at issues that were unjust. And that had been coming up for me lately in this time that I've been apart too. I can see little things started leading up to it until finally this memory surfaced. And it was, I guess I'll try to quickly share it, but basically it was, I had split from the father of my children. He was my first boyfriend. I had 3 kids with him. I've talked many times about how I went through a 6-year custody battle with him. But at this time, I still had my kids, and I was trying to get back up on my feet from becoming homeless with them and losing job after job because all 3 kids ended up having to have tubes put in their ears, and before that, what led up to that was chronic ear infections, and so I would start a new job, and then one after the other, the kids would get sick, so I'd miss all this time in a row, and I would lose the job. You know, jobs that I would just have started. And then the head gasket blew in my car, and I was staying at a shelter, and I had 3 kids, 2 hands, and basically, yeah, things were real rough. But what led up to that space where I was homeless with the 3 kids was the last job that I lost. I actually lost it because I lost my stability, and my anxiety sort of took over, because in this particular job it was actually something good. I was feeling like I was getting stable again because I was a secretary in a small company, and they sold heat sinks that they would import from China. And so there was a lot of logistical things. And there were this family couple, they had like 3 kids, and they lived in the suburbs, and their office was like in a back room of their house. And there's these 2 men who did a lot of logistical stuff and talks with China and negotiation of prices and things like that. And I was the secretary that they had hired. And they actually set me up with a pay to own their old van, their minivan. So that put me in a position to have a vehicle again after the head gasket blew in my car. And, that was really important with 3 kids. And I was doing it by myself because the father of my children, the whole reason that I had lost my initial job that I had had for 8 years when we split up was because we had shared childcare duties because we worked opposite shifts. And what happened was he started being too drunk for me to leave the kids with him. And so it was my twins were babies, and then the 2-year-old. And so I lost the job because I had to miss time, and they depended on me to teach new employees, and here I was, the teacher of the new employees, and I wasn't been able to show up, and it was a real mess. So unfortunately, I lost that job. This tumbled me down into this just blah 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 blah, trying to stay afloat, totally emotionally dysregulated, not understanding life or myself, or not feeling like I had what I needed. The mindset not of growth, but of I don't know what to do, of I need help, and also not even able to ask for it most of the time. But anyways, so in that job, what happened was my supervisor, the man that was in charge of me, is like my boss. He would, I guess you could say, he started to have conversations with me that would blur the boundaries. And I didn't have very good boundaries back then anyway, because like I said, I was in a traumatized space. I had grown up with narcissistic abuse hidden in the relating dynamics of my family. And I had been in a relationship where I was abused. And so he would just talk to me about, I don't know, I guess basically what happened was I was 23 or 24, 25 years old at this time. And I end up sharing a lot of personal information with him just because he's talking to me about it, just because, he's having these kind of conversations. And I wouldn't have recognized then that it was crossing boundaries that shouldn't be crossed between a boss and an employee. But back then, I think just having a man who was older than me and who was interested in my life and what was going on with me, and I think I kind of had the mindset like the more he knows about how bad I'm suffering, the more help he might be able to give me or whatever, you know, because like I was needy back then. I didn't, my father had committed suicide in front of me when I was 9 years old. So like there was this experience of not having a protector. And here was a man showing interest in my life, and I hadn't had that. And even with the father of my children, he wasn't a protector. He wasn't interested in my life, you know? I was just like along for the ride with him, and then giving birth to his children, and then like trying to survive even relating with him while he was an alcoholic and narcissistically abusive and cheating on me and so on and so forth. So I was like in rough shape, like psychologically, emotionally. I had no stability in my life. So I'm not saying that I was like appropriate to share these intimate details of my life with him, but things like um, before, so at that time, before I actually left the father of my children, there was another time he had cheated, and it was when I was a roommate with a girl, and he he was sexual with her after I went to sleep one night. Like I think I was drunk on my birthday, I think, and so he had cheated on me with her, and I knew it, and I shared this with this man. And also, this girl happened to be the cousin of my best friend. And so I knew where she worked and things like this. And, you know, he just found this information out through asking me questions. So he ended up going to this girl's work and sexually assaulting her, like grabbing her and things like that. And then it got back to me because she was the cousin of my best friend. And my best friend told me, like, hey, do you know that your boss, like, and they only knew it was my boss because he said that to her, went and sexually harassed this, you know, so and so at work. And I was like, wow, no, I did not. But of course, that made me uncomfortable because now I was like, holy shit, like he's infiltrating like my life basically. And whatever, you know, it was just like, all right, well, maybe there's a skewed part of me that thought like nothing of it, but like this version of me looking back knows that that is inappropriate. Like that, first of all, I shouldn't have shared the information, and second of all, that's pretty crazy for like my boss to do. Just like randomly go to this girl's work and like proposition and fondle her. So, anyways, like knowing that she had slept with my boyfriend, so maybe thinking that she was that kind of girl or whatever. So, anyways, he had this friend. My boss had this friend that he would always talk to as well, and the friend was with him, I guess. So, anyways, then at some point, this small company, the bosses were expanding. The couple, uh, Colleen and Tom were their names. They were expanding the office, and we were getting a new office and another town over. And my boss was going to show me where that was, show me the new digs, show me the new office one day. So I was to ride with him over to the new office. On the ride to the new office, he was on the phone with that friend of his, and who was some guy. And he told that friend that he was taking me over to the new offices to fuck me. And he had like been a little bit like flirty up to that point. He'd never said anything like that. You know, he maybe had made comments about my looks or things like that, but like that was pretty overt right there. And I was like, whoa, you know, and I didn't say anything. I didn't stop him, say nothing. I just said nothing. And in fact, I can't even remember if what the offices look like from this point right now. I don't know if we even saw the offices because like that's where the trauma happened, right? And like I'm blank from there. And what I remember next is that um, I started missing time and I started feeling uncomfortable. And then one day I realized I got to talk to my bosses. I got to talk to my bosses and tell them why I've been missing time and like tell them what's going on. Well, meanwhile, my best friend had left a job, the only job she had ever had, and had a sexual harassment suit and an award of a large amount of money because of that sexual harassment suit. And I had shared this with my boss in some of my many boundary breaking overshares. So anyways, when I went to my bosses, I had my best friend with me as like support to like talk about this. And I told them what had happened. I told them what my boss said, did, how he was on the phone with that other guy at the time. And so my bosses, I guess, went to investigate that. And then I was called in for another meeting. And basically, my bosses told me that the boss, Steve, denied it, that they even talked to the guy that I claimed was on the phone with Steve, and he denied it, and that they knew that my friend had had a sexual harassment suit that she was awarded money for. But that what they would do was put me under the supervision of the other guy instead, meaning that guy would no longer be my supervisor, but this other guy would be. Now, mind you, we were all in the same room. Until we moved offices, everyone was in the same room. You know, me, my boss, and the other guy. We all were in one room. And basically they were saying now I answered the other guy instead of this guy who I was telling them was inappropriate with me. And because they mentioned the fact that my best friend had had this sexual harassment suit and got a settlement, I knew that they just didn't believe me, and they were basically saying like that they thought that I was just trying to get a settlement out of the situation, and I was lying. And I wasn't. I wasn't even thinking about money or whatever. I was trying to, like, I wanted that job. That was the way that I had my vehicle. That was the way that I was like getting back on my feet. But I also was having so much anxiety and discomfort, especially after meeting with the bosses, because they did not believe me. And it became too much. Like, I was so anxious that it just became too much. And so this memory surfaced, and I was processing through it. I was like, wow, I haven't thought about that in so long. But basically, like, I was wronged there. I really was wronged. And it was an abuse of authority by my boss, but also the fact that the bosses, the owners of the company didn't believe me. I mean, I know would have been hard for them because this guy that they had working for them had worked for them for years. And maybe they were scared because like their business was the way they support their family. And their kids were all in private school and they were very religious and things like this. And you know, it hurt to know that they didn't believe me, that they actually did side with the guy who was the liar. I mean, I'm giggling a little bit now, but probably only because I sat with these feelings that came up, and the feeling was this impending doom feeling of like, I can do nothing about this. And that's the same feeling that I would experience when I looked at these large social injustices lately that I've been kind of looking at, you know? So it's interesting that I have some of these channels in my human design where it's like I can see these issues. I can look at the root of it. I understand what's causing it. But I'm also faced with this idea that people don't always believe me. People don't always give a shit. People are sometimes more invested in covering up and avoiding their own pain pockets, you know, than actually making the thing right or seeing the truth of things or whatever. So one thing I did do is ask for those people, you know, after life is over, that in there doing their life review, that they all take a look at that. I would like all of them, both of the men in the office and both of the owners of the company, to look at the truth of what that was and how it affected me. Because from there, my life took a dive, and you know, I didn't have a place for my children anymore. I had to turn to their father, who had been abusive, but who was now getting sober and was with a woman who had a place to live. And even though my goal was to get back on my feet, the father of my children vowed to keep the children away from me, and then that began a 6-year custody battle, for which we have all suffered the consequences. I have done a lot of work on cleaning my stuff up from that, but my children, you know, some of them it's an ongoing process, and it's something that the consequences were too great to even consider at the time because I was just in survival mode, you know, and the children too. And just only starting to be realized now sometimes when I do get to observe the patterns that resulted, you know, living out in my children's patterns sometimes. But also they have made a lot of progress on the patterns, like a lot of progress, you know, as far as the abuse from their father that was suffered as a result of them being actually placed into custody of their alcoholic, covertly narcissistic father by failure of the judicial system to actually do what was right, and you know, blah blah blah. There's a lot of injustices. I'm not going to go into like all the details of it because, like I said, it was 6 years. But like, there's a lot to unpack there, you know, like, and and I think having this situation where there's these people who I think are helping me get set up for success, right? Who, you know, it's not their responsibility. They weren't the ones who were my parents or whatever, but like they're kind of in that role because here they are, oh, providing me with an ability to get a vehicle and providing me with just like an interest in my life. Those are things that I never grew up with. And that I longed for so deeply that I was willing to kind of just like see that as what it was and just take that for my unquenchable need for that, you know? And then to find out that it was actually not that. It was not that at all, and there were consequences for that. And the consequences was just that was, you know, it was like the turning point. It was like a little linchpin was removed, and then I was able to roll down into the depths of hell, basically, because that's where it felt like I went after that, right? Because after that, and, you know, when my children were with their father, and by the way, like the way that happened was he had stopped drinking. He was with a woman. I was living in a shelter. He would come and get them every other weekend for visitation. And I asked him to help me, and he said no way. He said he would only take the oldest child. But we had twins as well that were babies. And, you know, like, what was that going to do? I needed to get on my feet. I needed to get a job. But like I had said, I kept losing jobs because of the kids' illnesses. And no one was even there at the hospital when I had to have 3 kids have surgery in the same day. And it was just me to be with them all, you know. And they weren't in the same room, you know. It's like, it was an insane part of a time in my life where I didn't have much support because there was a lot of dysfunction in my family, like of origin. And I had been in foster care before I got into the relationship with the father of my children. So it, you know, it wasn't like I had this thing to fall back on or anything. It was so tumultuous everywhere I went. And you know, I needed him to help me. So when he picked them up for a visit, one day I said, like, don't bring them back here. I need to get on my feet. Then I will take them back. And he got pissed and vowed to never let me have them in my life again. And that began the 6-year custody battle. And it was so devastating because that decision I made, which I didn't have anyone else to count on. I didn't even have a vehicle. And I didn't know how to get on my feet except for getting a job, and daycares wouldn't take them because they were all getting sick all the time. And I was just so like fatigued and weighed down with the traumas that had come to me at that time in life, or that had been with me from that up to that point in life, that I just kind of didn't see any other solution. Like, I thought, he's the only other person in the world that is responsible for these children besides me, and I need his help. And it's kind of like I thought forcing him to help would work because he had gotten sober. And that, to me, I didn't know about narcissism yet. I didn't even understand about covert abuse. You know, as far as I could see, the alcohol was the issue, and he was cut out the alcohol. So it's like, why shouldn't he help? And actually, it really backfired because he was actually abusive. He did start drinking again, and he did hence bring forth that battle for 6 years. And during that time, you know, things like him being arrested for cocaine while in Las Vegas, and you know, and having all the kids there on a family vacation to Las Vegas. You know, just crazy things like that happened all throughout, and like still the judge and the guardian ad litem knew his wife's family personally, so she wasn't unbiased. And the guardian ad litem is the one who tells the judge what's in the best interest of the children. I got a lawyer, and she came to court one day with a black eye and smelling like alcohol, and just like things were things were really shitty back then. And it just so happened that the kids did suffer. At one point, one of my children was kicked. He was 6 years old. He was kicked because he couldn't find the mittens. He was kicked off the front steps by the father, given a 6-inch bruise, a black eye, and a bloody lip, sent to school. And of course, the authorities got involved then. And the father lied and said I wasn't in the picture. But when the visitation came on the weekend, which I would call them every night and have them every weekend for most of the time, until there were other times that he got supervised visitation put on me one day when I missed court. And the reason I missed court was simply because I was just literally in survival mode, barely getting by every day, so fucking depressed that this is all happening. And it just like slipped my mind, kind of thing. It was really crazy and intense. But like, because I wasn't at court, he was allowed to claim a bunch of stuff that wasn't true, and actually had supervised visitation put on me. And in the supervised visitation, they supervise and they take notes of everything that's said. And my kids even told me in the supervised visitation that their father would punish them for things that they said to me in those things, and that would go into the report that he would get, and they would get more punished. And it was atrocious the way the system worked, right? Atrocious. When I was made aware that the kids had been removed from him and put into foster care, and I said, hey, I've been having my kids every weekend. I call them every night. I am in the picture. The school knows that because I go to school meetings. And they had never looked into it. The state never looked into it. So to cover their asses, they just said, oh, well, you need a criminal background check to have my own children. And hence began this whole deeper thing, which it wasn't just me that needed a criminal background check. It was also my boyfriend at the time, and we lived together. And he had a child full time and another daughter. And so it was not just me. Now it was a whole investigation of the whole family. And he had things on his record from having domestic violence issues with his ex. So that tied into it as well. And I was deeply codependent at that time. So the relationship was just part of me, but it was a reflection of who I am, and all that stuff. And if you've seen my video where I talked about my ex that passed on, that was my ex that passed on. His name was John. And yeah, we made a go of it as a family at one time, and it was real rough because we both had issues with custody with our significant others who had made our lives hell. But anyways, so this kind of injustice that I had experienced, I'm not saying that I was completely innocent in it and that I did all the right things every time and that I didn't make any mistakes. In fact, I think I was running self-sabotage programs very, very deeply. There was a lot of drinking when I didn't have the kids. There was a lot of drugs when I didn't have the kids. And it was a real bad time where I wasn't loving myself and I didn't know the right thing, and I was completely lost, and I was in pain, and I felt the injustice of what I felt was like the world and life. And it was me living out the programs of my ancestry and what I had endured up to that point in my life. I'm going to just pause so I can cough. All right, so I know that this is going on for a while here and we're at an hour, but I'm thinking, oh, should I do part 2? I'm not going to. just going to keep going. So maybe you can watch this in parts if you're interested. But really, it's meant to inspire you to look at your own. But it's also nice to know about somebody else's, to compare and contrast, to know yourself better. Not to compete, not to put yourself down. It's none of that, you know? It's like sometimes I know who I am because I know who I'm not. You know? Sometimes I know who I am because I see myself in the other. You know? It's like that. Okay, you can also be prone to self-doubt and insecurity. You may worry about what others think of you, and you may be afraid to take risks. It is important for you to learn to trust your own intuition and to believe in yourself. I did have to do that. And I had to do that in the face of these experiences where there was injustice. So that was a very private, internal thing, because I knew out there wasn't fair, you know? And that, I think that's part of the whole thing that pushed me inward, that pushed me into this hermit energy, like being in the cave. And like I said, the cave is a place where I'm comfortable. So even though I'm not afraid to stand out, even though that's driven from within me, it wasn't without its doubts at times. And I had to face those doubts. And as you know, if you've been following along, I programmed myself to do shadow work. So if I had a doubt or a fear and it came to my awareness, I was automatically alchemizing it. So that's how I overcame those things for the most part. I'm not saying that there wasn't always something for me to work on. Most recently, it was more about my body and fearing judgment of my body, and having thoughts like, you know, I have all this great information and knowledge and wisdom about how to alchemize and get through and, like, you know, just be and, like, be yourself and be authentic and be free of what limitations there are in your field. And yet I carry a bunch of extra weight and would be classified as obese. And a lot of people will look at that with judgment. And I know that even just like not the awareness of that, but the consideration that that should reflect on me in any way is rooted in a fear of what other people will think. And thinking like, oh, well, they will think that I haven't figured things out because I haven't figured that out. And actually, what I've figured out about that is this is the perfect body for me at the time that I'm in, and it does challenge me. It does challenge me, and I wanted to be challenged. You know, like this is the body of my ancestry. If you look at some of the women in my life from my ancestry, they're built like this. They are built like this. You know, and they carry extra weight. Actually, I cut out sugar, so I'm starting to get a little bit of shape left, but you can see, like, I'm pretty thick, you know? And there's probably a lot of swelling and inflammation in my organs and things like that. That is going to, you know, change over time, and that I have already addressed at one point in my life earlier on, but from a different angle. And now I'm addressing my body and how I care for it through this angle of more pure love. Not of wanting to fit in, not of wanting to be found attractive, not of wanting to dress nice, although that really is important to me, you know. That was one of the frustrations, is that I can't dress how I want to dress because my body type doesn't support my fashion sense exactly, you know. I still utilize a fashion sense to dress this body, you know, but there was this part of me that was like, this is not ideal for the fashion that I would prefer. And instead I had to change that around to like, well, find what you do like for this body. And that's what I've done. And I end up wearing a lot of baby doll dresses and things like that because that's just what I like. And that is more flattering for this figure, for, in my eyes, for me, you know. And it's actually become almost nothing to do with how others might find me attractive or not. And that has really been a gift, because as a girl, you know, wanting her dad's attention, not getting it, and then losing her dad, and then just wanting a protector attention, a caregiver attention, and thinking that being attractive would get me there, because that was one of the ways that I got attention, is through being attractive back then. Um, it it's sad to me that that was the case, but to be free of that and to understand that that's not where it's at. um, yeah, it's a worthwhile process, at least in my life and in my incarnation, to find that, like, I wasn't put on this earth to be eye candy for somebody else. I'm my own creation. You know what I mean? Like, this body, I can sculpt this body. I can work with this body. I can learn this body. I can care for this body. Like, this body's like my baby. You know what I mean? And I do love that I have gone through times of that not being the case, of being so mad at my body that it was rebelling against me, or you know what I mean? But it's like mastery of the body come from me came um, through way of being opposite of that, because I was totally dissociated from my body for the first 40 years of my life. And what I mean by that is dissociation. I would bring my energy would be outside of my body, and I would mostly be living from out here, and my body was more like a walking zombie. And I was like more out here. I was dissociated from experiences. I might have been seen as aloof. I mean, I do have an Aquarius ascendant in astrology, so being seen as aloof is probably something that's not going to go away. But I was definitely even more so. And as I embody more of my sun energy, which is sun in Scorpio, I'm probably seen less as aloof and more as mysterious. You know, and you can see how those energies are sort of like little different angles of the same thing. And all it is an energy of, oh, there's a thing and I'm not sure I know about that. Oh, there's a thing and I'm not sure it's interested. You know? Okay. So there have definitely been doubts and fears along the way. Gate 14, power skills. It's the gate of sensitivity. It is located in the throat center and is associated with the element of air. The archetype of Gate 14 is the seer. You're a highly sensitive individual who is deeply attuned to the world around you. You have a keen ability to see the truth, even when others are blind to it. And you are also a gifted communicator who can express yourself with clarity and conviction. Well, you know that about my expression if you've been watching my channel, because I do get really in this convicted space of expressing, and that has been something that I needed to learn about, where it was like, oh, my words have impact. And especially if I'm feeling, or if I'm expressing impactfully, you know, because there are different ways of expressing, right? Like, you can tell the difference when I'm expressing something where I'm not really sure about it, I'm questioning it, is that true? And you can feel when I'm in the knowing and I'm like saying, this is it. And as far as like the ability to see the truth, it's true that I can see the truth. And I think that is part of the issue with the abuse of authority thing, where I can see not only that the authoritator is in an abusive space, which is basically a lie space, a deceptive space, but I can also see that they may not be aware of that, you know, that they probably are not going to respond to what I have to say about that, even if I were to share the truth, because they are in denial, or they are into a space of repression or suppression. You know, I can see all that too. So there's this, like, it's like, holy shit, look at that little juggernaut of bullshit. All right, well, maybe I can pick at it from this angle by asking this question in passing. You know, it's like that a lot of times. And when I started this talk, I talked about how I like to be in depth. I like to be down in the nitty gritty of a person. So it's like, I see the whole knot, we're in passing, we're strangers. Maybe I can ask you this one question in passing to get you to start untangling that knot. But really, if we were going to be, in a relationship and relating, I want to deal in the stuff where you're in a juggernaut and you're actively untangling it because you know who you really are below that. Like I know who I really am below that. You know what I mean? That is where this thing is a little bit more difficult. I don't know if it's going to say that next when it talks about the difficulties of this channel, but like this gate, but like that's my experience of it. It's like, yeah, I see the truth, but like, when they say a blessing and a curse, I don't look at it that way. Like I try not to say that it is a curse. I know that it's a blessing, but as a human being who wants to relate on a deeper level, sometimes it can feel like, wow, there's a lot of missed opportunities here. I would love to relate to you on this deeper level because I see the truth of you. I see the potential of you. But also I see that you're over here. You're probably not interested. You're kind of distracted. You would get mad at me if we addressed these things. You're not addressing them on your own. And I can't make you. So like, darn, we're not compatible. Darn, Because it's like I fall in love with every person. Some more than others, for sure. Yeah, and it says about being deeply attuned to the world around you. Yes. Your sensitivity can be a blessing and a curse. It says that. That's funny. It can make you feel overwhelmed and drained at times. Oh, yeah, that's another thing, I suppose. But I think I've worked with that enough where I know to detach. I know how to untangle my energy from the other now. I never used to. So I think this feeling overwhelmed and drained led to me needing to learn how to detach, how to look at a difficult situation that maybe even I'm invested in because it's a family member, and then still keep myself out of it because I know that I can't be effective and that I'll literally just go in circles in their tangled mess if I try. It's about knowing when the challenge is worth it. Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's something I had to learn. I had to cultivate that for myself. Is this challenge worth it? And yes, that played in on my earlier intimate relationships with men because they were filling this role of being my protector and the one to love me. Excuse me. I wouldn't really look at the fact of like, okay, this is challenging. Is this a challenge that I should indulge in? I would just say, okay, this isn't challenging. This is challenging. Let's face the challenge, face the challenge, face the challenge, face the challenge, face the challenge. And I would exhaust myself facing the challenge because in some of those instances, those relationships were actually designed to wear me out. So I would have to look at it and be like, okay, you're dead on the floor. What are you going to do now? Oh, you think you're going to face another challenge? Watch this. They're going to step on you as they walk out the door. How's that? And then there's only one thing to look at it, which is, oh my God, I exhausted myself to the point where I couldn't even function anymore. And then they walked away. They didn't face the challenge. That I was facing the challenges. They were probably feeling like they could never be good enough, because I was just like, always like, all right, I'm coming. And it's like, because I see the truth. I see the truth. I see our potential. Why would we live in this little juggernaut crap when there's this potential for, you know? So this has been a challenge in my relationships as well. Yeah, interesting. I'm finding out a lot about myself as I talk about this. So, it can also give you a deep understanding of others and the world around you. Yes, it is important for you to find ways to ground and protect yourself from the energy of others. Yes. You also need to learn to express your sensitivity in a healthy way. Okay. So, have I learned to ground and protect myself from others, from the energy of others? Yes, and it has been a process. And it's probably something that I've just come to the end-ish, maybe end of learning. And, it does have to do with what you allow, what you entertain, what you focus on. But it also has to do with looking at the reasons why, right? Because, like, if there's an empty space, something's going to flow into it. So if the emptiness in me feels like it needs to be filled with something, and I think that, then it invites in whatever is I feel is lacking. And sometimes it invites it in the form of lack. Like, oh, you feel like you're not, that you need love. You didn't know that you're already love. Oh, you feel like a lack of love. Okay, let's put a lack of love in here. Now you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't love you. Shit. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like that space needed to be, first of all, extract the thing that's not love, but fill up the space with what is love, which is that I am love. And fill up with the space with that knowing and that understanding of how I act when I am that, with the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of that. That's what goes in that space. So it's been, and as far as detaching, like in the case of, say, a family member who might be in suffering, and I feel like, I want to assist this family member, it's knowing where the line is, and it can change from moment to moment, day to day, where the line is between how much I can give and where I'm starting to sacrifice too much. If I have resources and I can give, I want to do that and I will do that. But if I cross over to the space where I'm sacrificing, it's like I will have nothing to give, and then I won't even be able to get up to get something to give for a while until I replenish. So I could actually like put myself out of commission for days or weeks, depending on how much the sacrifice is, right? And there have been lots of trial and error with this particular thing, right? Like I've been in positions where it's like I gave, and then like I didn't have enough for myself, and it's like, oh shit. Oh, now I got to go weeks without for myself. Oh, and now I don't have, like, say it was money. Oh, now I don't have the money to feed myself the nutritious food that my body thrives on, and now I start feel tired, and now my stomach is kind of acid, and like all because I sacrificed too much to give to the other. And in the case of, children, like a mother has that sacrifice built in many cases. I think it's important to have. But also, like a mother bird, right? There's a point where you want your children to leave the nest. And sometimes when there's been dysfunction in the upbringing, it's like you don't know exactly where that line is, right? It's like, well, it's not like this nest was really healthy to get that bird ready to jump out. So like where's the space where my responsibility is not going to be a hindrance to them? And that being a mother, I think, is one of the key huge parts. I'm just realizing this and it's making me tear up a little bit in the back of my eyes. But the one of the huge parts of learning that lesson about what is too much sacrifice and how much can I share and where is it hindering the other. It's like we've talked, like you've heard about enabling. That's when you're kind of doing everything to the degree where it's like you're a crutch and now you're in the way of this person who could walk on their own, but you're tripping them because you're this crutch. That exists, that's real, but like I don't think it's a hard and fast rule for every child in every situation, right? I think that this is such a fluid thing because people are fluid, people are different, moods change, abilities change, and I have a son who actually taught me that, above all. And I guess I'm sharing this, and I don't often share real intimate details about my children, as you know, if you've been watching my channel. And that is because I don't want to violate their privacy. But I can tell you that I have a son who maybe you could describe as mentally different. And sort of what happens is you start to understand that time only exists in this third dimension, and a lot of people here are living in this linear timeline where this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And I've heard it described, I believe it was by a talk by Jason Estes, where he talks about schizophrenia. And I'm not saying that that's the diagnosis that my son has. Like I said, I would classify as mentally different. But definitely this particular thing that Jason Estes identified and described has been something I've noticed with my son and has caused me to realize that it's so fluid. And that is that my son, one of my sons, seems to bop around in time and space. Like he loses his place in time and space. So sometimes, like, something will activate him into going to another time where he was alive, right? So maybe it would be like, here's an example, and here's the most practical example that's coming to mind really quickly, but this can happen on a lot of different levels and a lot of different ways and spaces, right? I do think that he bops around to other lifetimes, but here's just one example that is really practical, and it's that, like, you could be talking to him and then you say something and it triggers him to go back to a conversation you had like a year ago. And he starts responding to the conversation you had a year ago. And if you're lucky and you remember that conversation, you can maybe put it into context and go, oh wow, he's talking about that. He's talking about that, you know? And it's real for him. It's real. And time only exists in our interpretation of the third dimension, right? Time does not exist outside of this dimension, and so what that shows me, he's multidimensional, and he easily pops out of this dimension, like so easily. And so a challenge for him in this lifetime is to get anchored into this. Remember, I talked about myself and dissociation. Well, he is an extension of learning about that, right? He is an extension of what has happened in me as dissociation, which in him is I'm 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 easily moving around to different times and spaces. Now, you can understand that this makes it very difficult for him to form relationships with people, for people to understand him sometimes. But for my experience of him, it has made it so important for me to be in that space of allowing for the other to be where they're at when they're there, you know? And not expecting them to be something, to know something, to remember something, to connect with something, to learn something. Because he could have bopped back to age 8 where he's learning something else, you know what I mean? And so it's wonderful when he can take more control of that, right? And I find that more and more as I interact with him, he does that more and more. He more and more is able to stay stable on his timeline, we'll say, in his third dimension, and experience things a little more linearly. Because you can imagine if the other thing is happening constantly, you're losing everything in life. Like you can't keep it together, and you might start feeling an overwhelm and abundance of emotions and things like that. And so then there's this role with me as his mother. It's like, okay, well, I want to pick up the slack and fill in the gaps. And I know that this does stem in part from the ancestry and also the upbringing, right? This lack of stability that he experienced. And lack of continuity, losing people leaving his lives. And I didn't go into a lot of detail on that of what that custody battle was like and how things ended and moved on from that and how the kids came back to me and blah, blah, blah. But all that kind of stuff did happen. And, to see the progress is wonderful, but also I can appreciate what role he has actually served me with, what role he has played for me in my understanding of life and how humans work and where my place is within giving and being for other people and allowing that for them, despite the truth that I may see, right? Because, like, say he bopped into another time and space, it's not always appropriate for me to tell him that's what happened, even though I see the truth, you know? Sometimes he's going back to that space and it's just going to be that space. It's important for you to find ways to ground and protect yourself. And that, of course, is something that he's challenged with in this lifetime. And then my role is like, okay, how much do I protect him here in this space that he's in, right? Because, you know, like a baby bird leaving the nest. It's like, I'll protect him from it completely, except for, oh, this is going to hinder him. And oh, and now he's not going to have the experiences he needs to bounce off of and learn how important it is to ground himself and things like that. So there was this like realization of like, I can't save him from everything. I can't sacrifice everything about myself and my own life and my own stability in order to be with him in this chaotic space that he is in and is learning from as a part of his life's energy. You know, he's 26 years old. So, okay. And he is certainly capable. I think he was probably a higher level soul than me. Because who does that? Who fucking does that? You know, it's a life of being set up for coming in and being abused by authorities. Because when you're in that space of bouncing around from time and place and like appearing to lose your mind and lose your space, everybody thinks they're an authority over you. Everybody thinks they know better than you for you. And, you know, just from a human perspective, that can be anger inducing. That can feel really shitty. And that makes you realize, like, a lot about life. I'll just say that. You know, I won't claim to know exactly why or everything about what he's experiencing and learning. I just can tell you that I've seen the truth of things, and I because these people are people that are important to me. You know, when I see the truths of some people, it's changed me and it's helped expand me into the understandings that I have now, and acceptance and allowing for others and their process and journey. You also need to learn to express your sensitivity in a healthy way. And I think that just comes with, you know, my own trial and error of like, oh, if I'm overwhelmed, I can't just lash out, you know? And I think that's probably one of the lessons that my particular son that I was referring to is also learning. Just because the results, the consequences. I learned by consequences. Like, I learned that, like, oh, if I am so angry and overwhelmed and then I squeeze my cell phone in my hand as tight as I can, it breaks. And now the screen on my cell phone is broken, you know? I haven't broken my own stuff in years, but like, that is this kind of stuff that I would do, and then I had to learn from, right? So a healthy way would be like, okay, you know, let me kind of take a breath, let me surrender, let me just like allow this energy to be with me and be the bigger version of myself that allows it to be with me. It's like, oh, okay, now I don't have to act out in it. Now I'm not overwhelmed by it. Now it's not like looming over me and making me act a fool. All right, gate 55 is known as the gate of spirit, and it's located in the solar plexus center. The energy of this gate is all about emotional depth, personal change, and inner abundance. You have a deep understanding of the emotional realm, and you are able to feel things very intensely. This can be both a blessing and a curse, as it can make you feel overwhelmed at times. Like I said, I don't ascribe to looking at it like a curse. I know that's an experience I'm having, and it's a challenging one. That's what I know. And that it's true, yeah. Like, it has been a challenge to feel things intensely. However, it also gives you a unique perspective on the world and allows you to connect with others on a deep level. Yeah, this would be responsible for that want that I have to meet in that deep place. It's like, I see you in the deep place. I know you got the deep place. I know my own deep place. Let's go into the deep place. Can we go deeper? And I've only ever asked that question to one man. And he said no. We were just having a conversation. And it's very interesting because I think it can induce fear in people. I think being seen so deeply can induce fear in people. I've seen it. I've seen people be intimidated by that. And that's okay, you know? Gate 55 is also about personal change. You're constantly evolving and growing, and you're always looking for new ways to express yourself. So true. I have so many ideas that I haven't even put into play yet about ways to express myself. And more or less, some of the things that I haven't done yet are things that I'm still working on the ingredients of, you know? And probably also why I'm never bored, because like I always have something on the back burner that I'm working on. This can be a bit of a roller coaster ride, as you'll often go through periods of highs and lows, right? Like I showed you that little craft I was doing, and I said, oh, I got bored with it, and I put it away. It's like I got bored with that, but I didn't get bored in general. I knew there was something else that got my attention, you know, for that moment. However, it's all part of your journey to find your true self. Yes. Finally, gate 55 is about inner abundance. You have a deep faith in the universe and believe that there is always enough for everyone. This gives you a sense of security and peace even when things are tough. Now, because I did grow up in the lack paradigm and in this um, tangle of beliefs about lack, there isn't enough, I'm not enough. Um, when I finally came to the space of faith, of understanding that there is enough, that it's just a matter of believing that and allowing that, um, I never could fully lose that again, right? Like once I tapped into the space of abundance and knowing there's enough, once I stepped out of that lack, you could call it the lack matrix, right? Once I stepped out of that lack paradigm, I never could fully be in it again. You know what I mean? Like once I tasted the truth of who I am, I always knew, oh yeah, there is enough. So even if my mind were to start thinking, oh, there's not enough, oh, you know, nobody's listening, oh, I can't make a difference, immediately my heart speaks up and goes, that's not true. And then I open myself back up and go into that surrender space and go, oh yeah, that's just my worries, doubts, and fears. Let's see if there's one that I need to look at right now. I know that this energy can be challenging at times, but it's also incredibly powerful. Embrace your emotional depth, use your personal change to grow, and trust the abundance in the universe. Yeah. Gate 59, sexuality. It's located in the sacral center, and its energy is all about intimacy and bonding. You are the aura breaker, the one who can break down barriers and create close relationships. People are scared of this sometimes, especially the circles that I run in. And I think that's sort of the point. I think I went into a dense ancestry because I wanted to break it apart, because I wanted to, not in a mean way, in the nicest, most gentlest way possible, I wanted to liberate people from their limitation. And not because they were obligated to change it, but because if they never know it was possible, then they don't even have the ability to make the choice for themselves. You are driven by a deep desire to understand and be understood by others. Oh, that's so true. I used to say that what I wanted most in life was to be fully seen and absolutely understood. I mean, it's a little bit of a joke, but like it's what it is like I want that for myself, by myself. I want to understand myself. I want to see myself fully, you know? You are a potent source for intimacy, but it's important to use your energy wisely. It can be easy to overstep boundaries, so it's important to respect others' space. When you use your energy in a positive way, you can create deep and lasting relationships that are based on mutual understanding and respect. All right, I'm going to pause this right here. And I want to say, I'll be right back. I want to say that this is something I'm working on still. All right, hold on. Oh my God, you guys. I was just downloaded with something really profound that I'll share. And that is that when I mentioned my son, who I talked about a few moments ago, one of the things about our relationship is that it's been full of tension. And if you look at our astrology charts, there's a square in there that is particularly difficult. And it has caused us to kind of just like be sandpaper against each other, you know, ever since he was 14. And when he was 14 is when he came back to me from his time with father. And one thing it revealed to me was my own tendency to parent him like my mother parented me, which I didn't know yet how unhealthy it was until I saw the consequences and results of it. And also, like, his values and way of operating is just so different from mine that when we've had to live in the same space as each other, it's just been kind of like he challenges all of my comfort zones. Like, oh, I wanted the space nice and clean and neat, and I didn't want any garbage on the floor in his room because it could attract ants or mice. Well, too bad. Things like that, And things like, oh, I don't want my house smelling like cigarettes, so smoke outside. And then he's like, finds the spot where the smoke comes in the window. It's like, you know, um, just things like that, where it's like, whatever if it was one thing now and then, but it was like just like a whole slew of everything like that. And that's how our relationship had been going. And this is why we end up taking some space from each other at times, particularly. But also, I won't discredit the amount of healing I've done and the amount of self-realization I've had due to the grinding up against each other that we've done through our relating. I've been able to see where I could improve and where my limitations were and things like that, and where I wasn't living in unconditional love and things like that, where I was programmed to expect of him, or, be attached to an outcome, or think that, maybe even like try to take control to protect him from himself and things like that. And so I've been challenged a lot in opening up, but what I was just downloaded with was like that because of his thing where he's had experience with losing his place in time and space, that the tension in the relationship with me serves as an anchor point to him. Meaning, if he's lost in time and space, he can still find me because it's such tension in that energy. It's like, because say if he was vibrating very high and up in the gratitude place, then he wouldn't be getting lost into places of pain and suffering and lack, right? But where he is bouncing around is more like in the hell realms of suffering, of being abused by authority, of feeling lack, of feeling not enough. And so those are very low, dense places. And the density that can stand out to him, that's also a bridge up to the higher realms, is me. And because we have the tension in our relationship, and I keep him in my life, even though anyone else that wasn't related to me who had that much tension, I would just walk away from. I will never walk away from him fully. You know what I mean? Like, he's always going to be a part of my life. I love him. It's not something where I'm like, getting him out of my life because of this level of tension we have. It's just something that I've looked at like, oh, geez, I don't know how to learn, to overcome this, but I guess I'm going to utilize this for what it's worth, which was to heal myself of anything that I could do, And what I'm realizing is like that as a soul who came in to do what he's doing here on earth, having that in a mother like me, who is someone who's solid, strong, and stable, that tension point is an anchor spot for him. And it actually has been proven to me because, I don't know, there was one time where I was in town. I was in a place where I hadn't been for 2 years. And it was like in a local little like town restaurant. And I hadn't seen him. And he was walking around that town and happened to go into this place where he was not a regular, had not been in the habit of going into this place. And I hear this voice, and it says, and he's saying to the whole entire restaurant, "Does anyone have a lighter?" Like I told you, he's mentally different, right? Like there's no right and wrong way to do things in his mind sometimes, you know? And so I turn around and it's him. And the one time that I'm in this place in 2 years, like I hadn't been in that place, but the one time I'm in that place, he found me just by chance, by being, drawn into this place to ask for a lighter randomly to a bunch of room full of strangers who were dining, which is an odd, you know, socially nonconformist way to act, right? And that can, of course, rub people the wrong way. But to me at the time, I was just like so amazed, like, holy shit, of all the places we could just run into each other like this. Like, it's like, how did you, it's too much of a coincidence. How did you know I was here? And what I've just been downloaded is with that tension, serves as an anchor point for him. Wow. Wow. And that is helpful for me to know because it's like it lends toward me giving permission for all the other tensions that I've lived in the relationships that I've had. Because, who I am and what I am, and the fact that I can see deeply into people and see the truth, and, you know, want to solve the issues and want to look deeply, that can rub some people the wrong way, especially if they're deeply entrenched in some of their coping mechanisms that they do not want to give up, and some of their comfort zones that they feel are threatened by my presence. And I think just realizing this about my son also gives me permission to kind of apply that to other relationships where people were rubbed the wrong way, and kind of just say, well, it served them in some way, instead of feeling bad about like, oh, I always end up triggering people, or oh, like people are always scared of me, it's like, actually, this is just a role that I agreed to play. That's just the role I agreed to play for those people. And love is where you go to give, not get. So it's a loving thing for me to continue to be me in the face of that, and not, and also it's a sort of a test, right? For me to continue to be me in the face of that and not try to conform or make myself small. And that's something I did learn in the relationship dynamics growing up, is like trying to fit into this role, because there were expectations put on me. There were roles that I had. You had to, like, I basically had to be important or pleasing to mother, or you weren't going to get shit out of it. Like, no attention, love. There was no time that anyone ever sat me down and tried to learn about me or know me or what I need or want or how I feel. Besides, I was put into counseling, but that didn't solve anything because no one else was in the counseling. Like, it was as if I was the one who was wrong and bad. And it took a lot of counselors before one actually said, well, actually, the way your mother's treating you isn't very fair. And I was like, oh, really? I'm like 35 years old, and this is the first I'm hearing of that. No concept of that before then, Mother was just this sweet, loving being, but I didn't realize there were covert ways that their narcissism was playing out. And one of them was that if I expect you to do something, it doesn't matter who you are, what you feel, or, what you're doing at this time, you drop everything to do what I want. It was like being a slave. And and that's just because you're my kid. That's just because I have a need right now, and it is so unconscious to me that I am depending on you to meet it, because I haven't made an effort to meet it, that you must meet it now like it's an emergency, because that's how it feels to me. And this is the narcissism that's really gone under the radar in the relating dynamics of my family of origin, which is that it's a narcissism that says, like, I'm suppressing my needs. I don't think they could be met, but when one of them does surface and I need it met right away, it feels like such an emergency that I feel justified in expecting you to drop everything you're doing to meet my need right away, with absolutely no regard for you as a human being and what you might need. It's insane. It really is insane. And it's played over and over and over again. Yes, in myself, but also in all the other family members. And it's really been been one of those things that a lot of the other family members have been reluctant to see and heal from. And maybe it just feels like too much big pain because without the backdrop of how to get your own needs met, you're probably not going to look at your own needs, the ones that you've been suppressing and denying, and that you only let out in this emergency moment where someone else is expected to meet the need. You know what I mean? All right, so when it comes to relationships, which we're discovering with this channel that I have, this channel, this gate in this channel that I have, relationships being so important, I'm brought to this piece of information that I was introduced to by Jason Estes and proved true for me and helped me along the way in framing relationships for me. And it was this replacing boundaries with agreements. And the reason why it made so much sense for me is because, like I said, I've learned how to surrender. I've learned how to accept and allow in others, right? I've learned that expectations weren't going to serve me, either when they were put on me or if I put them on others. That it just wasn't conducive to having happy, healthy relationships. And because allowing, and alchemy was done through allowing to get into the space of neutrality, meaning acceptance for whatever extreme existed. I've understood that boundaries can be like resistance, you know, and what we resist persists. That's a law of the universe, basically. But it's, I think, a quote by Carl Jung. And basically it says that like everything's energy, and like when you put up a block to that energy, like all you're doing is like helping it build up its like force, right? Because you're just like putting a barrier that will eventually be plowed over. And that's the function of that thing where I said suppressed needs in my family were suppressed until it came out in an emergency, and then the expectation of someone else meeting it, right? But that's just how energy works. It's because it was suppressed and denied in self that it could even function that way. And so just having these boundaries actually promotes this to happen. But if you reframe that and understand from a bigger picture view that energies should just be allowed to move, whatever it may be. So if I have a need, I'm not going to suppress and deny it. I'm going to look right at it. Okay. And that allows you to be in the light of day, which is the first step of that formula we talk about for alchemy, which is acknowledge. So you're acknowledging the need you have, right? And in some dysfunctional relating families, that is at the root of what the issue is that people's needs they were taught to suppress or deny them in favor of meeting someone else's needs. It's just a perpetuation of the whole problem in the first place. But let's look at the root cause of it is suppressing the need. So once we can acknowledge the need, so we're no longer putting a boundary to the need within ourselves or others, right? Others are allowed to have their needs too. And it doesn't mean that we're the ones who have to meet them. I think that a couple things support this idea of raising your vibration into the space of agreements instead of boundaries. And that is that you agree to at least attempt to meet your own need. Like it's, sometimes your need will be a need for connection. So if you were to attempt to meet your need for connection, first of all, you have to be willing to connect. And second of all, you have to like put yourself in a space where you could possibly connect with another, whether it be online or in person, or, go to a park, go to a grocery store. What capacity do you need to meet that need within? And maybe even like looking at your why. Why do I want this need met? Because make sure it's coming from a place of love and not fear, right? Like, oh, I need some company right now. Oh, because if I'm alone, then I'm going to be flooded with my thoughts. It's like, oh, well, actually, maybe you need to be flooded with your thoughts, but maybe you need to actually make yourself a safe space to do that in. Can you get in the bathtub? Can you promise yourself that you're not going to hurt yourself? Can you let whatever emotion come and wash over you while you cleanse yourself through tears and water? You know what I mean? Like Epsom salts, crystals, whatever makes you feel comfortable in the moment to allow that, right? But sometimes it is just companionship and actually like a reflection of what it is to be sharing space with another human and, share whatever it may be. And so you give yourself opportunities to do that. You make the attempt to meet your own need, right? And and then okay, so agreements replaces boundaries, because if you are going to eliminate the boundary and replace it with an agreement, first of all, you're in that space of acknowledging what the need is, if it's a need, right? Or what the agreed upon method of behaving is. And basically, with that always comes an acknowledgement of what it is, right? So it's like, I agree to come to this space of our friendship with an openness and a willingness to accept you where you're at. Meaning, I'm not going to prescribe hoops for you to jump through to try to prove yourself to me. I'm just going to say, you show up how you're at, and I'll show up in a space that is allowing of that. Okay, here's an agreement, right? So that means if someone comes into that space and they're acting a certain way, and you come into that space and judge them for it or say that they're wrong, then you've broken that agreement. But if your agreement is, I will accept you so long as you're not causing harm to yourself or another, and they come into the space causing harm to themselves, you haven't broken the agreement by saying, oh, well, I'm going to give you some space because you are harming yourself. You know what I mean? So it's like when both people can understand what they're agreeing to operate like or feel like or show up like within the context of that relationship where we're relating, the place where we meet each other and to relate. And the agreement requires us to both have understood and agreed. So we both have considered, we both have acknowledged, we both are in a position to follow through with what it is that we're agreeing to. So if we are in a relationship with somebody and they are like cheating on us and we have not agreed to a lack of monogamy or infidelity in our relationships, then we know that they have broken the agreement, and this is someone that we may not want to continue to make agreements with, or even trust that that agreement will go back to being met at any time. That now this is a vital piece of information, but we have not put ourselves in a position to have a boundary which says I will not allow cheating in my life, because if we approach that on the level of having a boundary, which is I will not allow cheating in my life, then if we also have a coping mechanism of putting rose-colored glasses on, we may tend to deal with that situation by putting our rose-colored glasses on to ignore the fact that there is someone cheating in our lives. Because things are more blocked off. We could potentially compartmentalize things. We could use some of the coping mechanisms that humans use by projecting, by denying, by fabricating. All of these type things can come into play when we are operating with boundaries which block certain pieces of energy off, which are not conducive to the flow that is allowed with agreements. So that's something I've learned, something that kind of was pivotal and life-changing for me to kind of bring me up to this space. And even though I learned it and understood it, there was still a time period where I was still kind of playing with boundaries and understanding that. And so through playing with boundaries and having boundaries and, enacting them, that's how I come to the place where I understood what's bigger than that. Okay, you are a potent source for intimacy, but it's important to use your energy wisely. It can easily to overstep boundaries, so it's important to respect others' space. And also when I told that story about oversharing with my boss, you can see how me creating that relationship intimacy comes so naturally to me, even when I was completely unaware that I was doing it. And I have seen this where in my experience when I was dealing with more people in general, like just in a day-to-day life capacity, there would be a lot of times where men would interpret my behavior as coming on to them when I was not. And sometimes there would be men that I was coming on to that would completely reject me or be intimidated or just turned off by it because of what my energy does when it comes into a space, right? It sees the truth. It wants to look at everything. It wants to go very deep, all those things that can be very uncomfortable for anyone who's in coping mechanisms that and have boundaries. So if if the boundaries are protecting you from even looking at yourself, then it can feel like a violation for have to have someone even present the option to move up to an agreement instead. And would I come into a relationship and have an agreement with somebody that they have a coping mechanism that is limiting to them and I agree to not step on it? Yes, I would do that. If we were discussing that and like they they at least could be aware that I'm aware of it and that I am consciously not disturbing it to in order to maintain the agreement we've made, that would be okay with me. If I have to come into a space and I know that they have a boo-boo, but they're in full denial of it, we're not allowed to talk about it, and it's like I can learn by accidentally stepping on it or looking at it that they're going to lash out at me if I do, that they're uncomfortable, that they'll run away. I can learn that. But you see, that's not an agreement. Like that was just me learning by trial and error. Like, oh, that person doesn't want to be looked at in that way, in that spot. They don't want to be told about that, you know? So sometimes it's like that. And that kind of constitutes walking on eggshells. And those, like I said, are not the relationships that I enjoy very much. And those are tension points, apparently. And it's not because it's wrong. It's because, say you're a soul and you come in and you know you're going to have to deal with certain energy. A person like me can come in and create tension in a spot that needs to be moved through, but that you haven't been willing to move through yet, you know? So that could be an agreement that I've made as on a soul level to do and be for others. So I don't want to beat myself up over it when it goes that way, right? It's not wrong for me to attempt to relate to people that aren't exactly open to it, but it is a lot more fulfilling and pleasant when I get to relate to somebody who has invited me. And sometimes people invite me and they are surprised by what I have to share. I think that might be part of this channel as well. Let's see what else it says. When you use your energy in a positive way, you can create deep and lasting relationships that are based on mutual understanding and respect. You're also part of the channel of mating along with Gate 6. This channel is all about reproduction and creating new life. You're the one who provides the energy for breaking down barriers and creating closeness, while Gate 6 provides the energy for conflict and resolution. Together you create a powerful force for creating new life. Yeah, I do always, like I said, try to resolve the conflict. And I talked about that before, where I had to learn in relationships where my focus was just like, I'll resolve this conflict. I'll resolve this conflict. And then I would just wear myself out because I forgot to like look at the bigger picture, which was like, is this person agreeing to resolve the conflict? Yeah. All right. So this was very interesting because in the context of me, like some of those things are more conscious than others, right? My greatest strength and power would come from my conscious sun. And what is my conscious sun? Let's see. My conscious sun is the 14. The 14 was the throat, the expression, the seer, attuned to the world around me, keen ability to see the truth. So my ability to see the truth is where my power and my strength is, you know? All right. So, and then it says about the unconscious sun, my hidden potential, the part that I may not be aware of. My unconscious sun is the 59. So my unconscious sun is the one we just talked about, which is that relationship one, which is building the intimacy within relationships and going to that deeper level. And remember I said that that's something I'm still working on, and that's because it's the unconscious part of my my mind and my brain. And what it says about that is hidden potential, part of what you may not be aware of, but has the power to transform your life. Yes, building relationships with people has the power to transform my life. And like I said, I've had a lot of experience of what not to do, what doesn't build relationships. And I'm still working on the idea of building an actual relationship that is full of these agreements and that does have compatibility, where both people are understood and both people want to understand each other. I mean, I want that, like, if there was ever a longing in me, I could tap into a longing for that. Okay. And then there's the earth gates. I'm going to talk about my nodes after this, by the way. This is still going, and we're at 2 hours. I realize it's long. And hopefully you're getting something valuable out of this. Your conscious earth is the grounding force. When expressed from a place of power, you feel grounded and supported to thrive. Okay, my conscious earth, I believe, is my 8. Let's see if that's true. No, my conscious earth is, yes, my 8. So my conscious earth, meaning what makes me feel grounded here on earth, is my contribution, having a unique perspective on the world, a gift for seeing the potential in others, and inspiring and empowering others to live their authentic lives. So when I am doing that, I feel most grounded, meaning I feel like this is a purpose that I have on earth. Okay, that makes sense. And the unconscious earth represents my spiritual connection and my path to enlightenment. It's the part of you that is connected to something greater than yourself and is the source of your deepest wisdom and guidance. So that's the 55. Let's just make sure. Yeah, that's the 55. My greatest contribution in terms of what I have to offer is my connection to spirit, the energy, the emotional depth, the alchemy, the transformation, and this like deep understanding of the emotional realm and the way that I can feel things, right? And how I can deeply connect with others. So the way that I deeply connect with others and the fact that I need to connect with others is all in my unconscious. Isn't that interesting? Interesting. And then I'm very conscious of my ability to see very deeply and to know things. I'm very conscious of that. But I've been unconscious of my relationship dynamics. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because most recently I started to realize, okay, so I haven't been very effective at I mean, yeah, I've had lots of experiences. I've hundreds and hundreds of readings. I've learned so much. I've loved it all, but I hadn't been able to establish myself as like a thriving business or anything like that. And I wondered about that, and in recent times have started to realize I bet it has something to do with my relationships because I don't have like a close friend. I don't have like a lover. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a close bond with anybody anymore. Even the people that I used to have close bonds with, I've outgrown. They just, our most recent interactions were just like, I realized, oh shit, I'm seeing something bigger than this person, and there's no real opening to share that, because when I do, it's like a dull note and it falls on that place that it's not really, that pleasant for me. And in some cases, they're just not inviting me to do that. And in order to continue relating with them, I'd have to like play down my ability to see. And I do enough of that in the in the interactions with family members that I want to keep in my life. So I knew that there was like something more in relationships. And I know there are plenty of people who can see what I see, who know what I know, who are spiritually aware and awake and understand and have the wisdom and want to be self-starters and grow and learn and are here to, you know, live this other way. I know there are plenty of those people. It's just like even I still haven't even been able to establish relationship or what I've understood as relationship with those people. And I've started to realize more recently like that is something I need to work on. Like that's probably where the rooted issue is for me. Because I know in my astrology chart, one of the things that is shown to me in my chart with interceptions and duplications is that I need to master the energy of self and other, like relating to self and relating to other, in order to unlock the abundance that is here for me on earth, meaning how I make a living and my public reputation. And boy, has that been frustrating at times. It's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to thrive until I create relationships. And I'm coming from a place of being around people who didn't relate fairly, who I had to serve, people please, play small for, and who also abused their authority. Awesome. And, you know, and also the complications of the ways that I coped. The ways that I coped were like, let's put on some rose-colored glasses. Let's just dumb ourselves down and like pretend we don't know what we know. Let's just be an observer. And there's just something about all of that that doesn't get to that deep place that I want to be at with others. You know, I can see into your deep well. Like, don't you want to just hang out there with me for a while? And so many people don't. And so many people will let me point it out to them and tell them about their own deep space. In fact, some people really crave that. I've noticed people who come back to me for readings again and again are people who love when I can dig into their deep spot and like show it to them, and they feel so seen. And people cry because they've never felt so seen. So that's lovely and interesting and stuff, but like they can't do that for me. So it's like, okay, you know, I can see your deep place. You like when I go in there for you, but like it's not reciprocal, you know? So I'm not saying I hate it, you know, it's still lovely and stuff, but like I think part of it also was it made me feel like an authority, and I never wanted to be an authority because I had just seen people who abused their authority, you know? But it is true. I am an authority in some ways on how to. I'm not an authority on others and how they should use their energy. I'm an authority on knowing that I see the other that deeply. That's just it. Like it's just that seems like so dumb to say. It's like I know what I know. Like why even say it, right? All right, let's see what the nodes say about. So all this is supposed to rest on the nodes in my chart. So let's look at where my nodes are. Okay. So the gate of 14, let me make sure this is mine. Gate of 14. Sorry, I can't enlarge the picture anymore. My eyes are doing a thing where there's like, are you sure you want to see this? Yeah, I'm really sure, eyes. I'm really sure. All right, let's do some glasses. I actually try to avoid using these glasses because I want my eyes to come back, and I think with cutting out sugar, they will. But I think they can also get tired when I overwork them, and I've been looking at the screen now for hours, obviously. Okay. That doesn't even really help, does it? A little bit. Okay. Where's that gate 14? I think. Oh, yeah. 14. 14 is a gate that I have conscious and unconscious. Okay? So in the gate 14, this is one of my nodes. This is part of the foundation of what where I'll be using those things that we just learned about me, which is the fact that I can see the truth, get downloads, and also work on building relationships with people. Okay. And I'm going to do that in the context of Gate 14, the energy for prosperity, dream work, and inspiration. The gate of power, power skills. It's like the Midas touch. This is the gate where loving what you do brings a renewable energy to your projects and resources. Well, I do love tapping into that deep place and sharing it with people who want to see it. I do love that. Even though it's not reciprocal, even though I'm not being seen that deeply, it does still bring something to me to like be able to play in that space. Not play. I'm not like acting like these are my their playground. I'm just saying like to be able to touch somebody in the deep space is so like precious, beautiful, and honored by me. It's the gate. Okay, so this what I'm reading now is by andunleashed.com. ANDUNLEASHED.com. And Unleashed. And this person has information about each of the gates and channels for human design. This is dated November 20th, 2023. And we're looking at the gate 14, the 14 gate of power skills. It's the sacral life force's power to pull in and multiply resources. So all this stuff that I was doing is going to happen in the context of this. Like the Midas touch, this is the gate where loving what you do brings a renewable energy. The gate of power skills is the sacral renewable force, which has the potential to empower the individual, attract abundance and resources when expressed through aligned creative endeavors. Coming from the sacral, the hub for vital life force, reproduction, sustainability, and sexuality. The 14 gate of power skills is the release of life force energy to empower us and others with resources. What that tells me right there is it's a infinite source, right? This never dies out. Once you tap in, it never dies out. Connecting to the identity, the hub for self, love, direction, identity, purpose, give and receive. Reaching to gate 2, the direction. The guardrails on how to use and direct those resources. It's here to receive, witness life moving through you. Together they form the 14-2 channel of the beat. There is a person that I've interacted with that has the 2, and I don't have the 2. So what happens in human design is, you have a gate of that energy, and then it corresponds to another gate of energy that completes the channel of energy. And these are on an axis and they work together, much like the astrological signs, but in this case, it's channels or gates of energy. And I know that when you interact with other people who complete your channel, you have access to that energy. So there is people in my life that complete this. Actually, I should say there was someone in my life that I interacted with for a time that my attention was brought to, so that I looked at their chart, and I recently realized, even though this person is in the past for me, they activated this channel for me, this particular channel, by having the 2. So only when I was in their presence And only as a result of relating to them did I gain access to the full channel. Otherwise, I was just working with the gate. And the full channel lets you, I think, more directly access the infinite well of energy. Let's see. Looking to be transformed, it has the unique skills and ability to bring something new, different, and fresh into the collective. It has the drive to work and commit. It's the potential, where doing the work they love enables them to plant the seeds to abundance. Hold on. Okay, I've gone on an outing, had to run an errand, and I'm back. I will return to what I was saying, which I believe was talking about how other people can fill in the gates to form a complete channel, and that I've had the experience of having someone fill in the gate of channel 2, of 2, to complete this channel for me, which, let's explore what that meant. And these are things that I'm only recognizing in retrospect, right? Like, also, let's see if I can, let there be light. There was light. Okay, just a little Palo Santo upon my return. So the channel has the unique, this is when it's complete, has the unique skills and ability to bring something new, different, and fresh into the collective. It has the drive to work and commit. It's the potential where doing the work they love enables them to plant the seeds to abundance, and the fruits return tenfold to them and those around them. It essentially releases energy, money, resources to empower direction in life. Yet the 14 without the 2, which is me, might not always know the direction they're going, getting lost in the details and missing the bigger picture, the overall vision. It can generate resources, but doesn't know the best way to direct them. How can you instead trust in the guidance of your strategy and authority? And this is me. It's like, so I know that there's some resources. I know I can distribute and generate them. I kind of know what needs to be done, but maybe I'm missing out on an aspect because I don't have the biggest picture view. So the only thing I can go do is getting in the flow state, right? So this really teaches to trust my own flow and my own intuition. That's really what having one side of that channel filled is, and one side of that channel being the 14. But say I teamed up and collaborated with someone who has the 2, then they have a bigger vision where they can kind of share with me, oh, well, you might want to consider this. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is something important to consider, you know? For instance, the person that did complete this channel for me, I can remember one day we were having a conversation, and he said something to me about how electric cars were actually mining the earth for some sort of resource that was actually detrimental to the earth to be resourced. It was a detrimental process that they were putting the earth through in order to use these electric cars. And I wasn't like condoning electric cars. I've never wanted an electric car per se, but I think he assumed that about me because I am sort of this all natural, person, like wanting to be at one with nature and things like this. And so he might have thought that I was for electric cars, thinking that was the solution. And even though I wasn't, the fact that he shared this with me told me some pieces of information. One, that he thought that of me, and two, that he did have a bigger picture view to offer me. Because say I was someone who was advocating for electric cars, I had never looked into it. I didn't have a strong feeling on it, but say I did, and say I would tend to opt for electric cars or think that be a solution for all the people, right? In my understanding of the fact that gasoline could be also detrimentally harvested from the earth, right? So I might think, oh, well, we can just do this instead since we're harming the earth with the fossil fuel extractions and things like that. And his bigger picture offered me, if I was in that stance, the realization that that isn't a viable option if your concern is taxation on the earth, because this other method also taxes the earth. You know, you see what I'm saying? Like, as an example of how this other person had a bigger picture view, which enhanced my understanding of how resources could be used, if that had been a resource that I was even trying to manage, which it wasn't at the time. Maybe will be someday, I don't know. Okay. But I have definitely had this experience of not exactly knowing where I'm going, but having to fall into following my flow state and my strategy. And strategy and authority are two things that play in big into human design. In the way that, sorry, my hair is completely messed up after my outing. In the way that how you navigate the earth, given the energies you have and all that, and how your energy works, you have to have a way to read that into your body. And in particular, projectors are the advisors, and their energy penetrates deeply into the other. And we need to wait to be invited. So that's part of our strategy, is to wait to be invited. And our authority is knowing if that invitation is the right invitation for us, means checking in with ourselves on whether it is or not. And different projectors have different authorities, and my authority is emotional. And we've seen that emotions is something that I am here mastering on earth, that I'm very good at understanding, right? And part of that is because I have an emotional authority, and I understand that experiencing all the ways to feel about a thing is valuable. And so that's what I have to do. Like, on all major decisions, even a major invitation that comes my way, I wait 3 days in order to make a decision on that, because 3 days allows me to cycle through all the emotions, all the ways to feel about that thing. And I learned this by trial and error too, because the way I came to it was, I used to let myself be impulsive. Like, if I got an offer or an invitation and it was like logically something that I should do, I'd just say yes. But then maybe it backfired, or it turned out terrible, or I wasn't actually valued in that position, or, you know, the invitation was actually sour from a frenemy, or, you know what I mean? It's like it didn't turn out right because I was not using my authority, which is wait 3 days and feel my way through it. I was using logic, which was my mind saying I should do this. This is what people should do. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like trial and error, where I learned, oh, if I do follow my authority, then I can feel much more confident in making those decisions, because I know which is right for me and which is wrong for me. And an example of that is, I made a recording last night. I just felt like, oh, it's time to start sharing again. It's time to start expressing again. So I thought I would make an attempt, but I was already in bed. And I was just like talking. And then I got onto this one topic. And then I could feel in my solar plexus, in my gut, that that topic was not something I should share about. It was a private piece of information, you know, and it wasn't about not being authentic. It was about not the appropriate time to share that piece of information. And what told me that was how it felt in my body when I was sharing it, which ultimately I just didn't upload the video, so no harm done. But I'm just sharing that as an example of how I know by the way it feels whether or not it's right for me. And sometimes that feeling is in the moment, but only on things that are much, much less than major life decisions. Like things like a job, a move, a marriage. Those are the things I'm going to take 3 days on. Things like, do you want to go out to lunch with me? I probably can make that decision in less than 3 days, you know? And I do it by how it feels. And the only reason I can do that is because I know there are a lot of ways to feel about that. So I take a moment and I tune in and I just run the wheel of all the ways to feel about it before I make the decision. So even if it's a face-to-face decision I'm making, where I only have a moment, I will just rapidly run through all the ways to feel about it. And if the one that snags me is the one that says, then I won't say, yes, I'll go to lunch with you. I'll say, ooh, I'll get back to you. Ooh, I'm not sure. Yeah, let's think about doing that in the future. I'll say something more true rather than committing myself to something that I know is not right for me based on how it feels in the moment. And I may not even know why. Recently, I had an invitation to do readings at a event at a crystal shop where I love all the people there and have done this several years in the past and with great success at times, and had kind of taken a step back from on the past couple times, but I was still invited back. And I like the part of me that's social and loves the people and wants to be part of it and doesn't want to miss out on opportunities, wanted to say yes. But as I ran through all the feelings of it, something in me said no. And it was the thing I had to listen to based on how that felt. There was a big no in there for me, and I didn't know why. So all I had to say was like, I will consider it. I couldn't come out with a firm yes, because I wasn't going to make a commitment based on the fact that I knew something fell off. And and I knew it was more like I can't commit to this. So I didn't commit to it. And that can be tricky, right? With people who expect you to show up as a part of your showing your interest in them as people. And, I wanted to do that for them. And I understand that that's the way that some people have expectations of me. Hold on. But again, I've also learned that I can't live by and for the expectations of other people toward me. I cannot do that. I know that because that's not me, and that doesn't allow me to honor who I really am. I know that because that's how I was brought up, and I know that doesn't work for me. But it doesn't mean that other people aren't still operating that way, and it may work for them in certain instances, or they may be learning something from operating that way, right? So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I know I can't operate that way. So I said that I couldn't commit to it to the people, and I had to just go with that. And then when the time came around, it was actually it, the event happened during the time period where I was healing the thing that I just made a video about, where I talked about releasing trauma that was in my body since birth. So that weekend that I was invited to that event for, that I had a feeling I shouldn't commit to it, so I didn't commit to it, coincided with the weekend that it ended up that I was releasing the trauma from my birth. And had I committed to that thing, I would not have been able to release the trauma from my birth that was ready to be released and was primed to come up at that time. And so just by listening to my authority, even though I had an invitation, and that's part of the strategy, is wait for the invitation, my authority said no. I listened to my authority, and that's how I navigate the situation without having the biggest picture view, meaning I did not know the reason that it was a no for me. I just knew it was a no. And I have had enough experiences in my life that I trust that now. I've gone against it enough that I know I shouldn't go against it, basically. All right. Okay, and then go more about 14. So these are the nodes. These are what my other stuff rests upon, right? So my other stuff rests upon me being able to trust that I know how to allocate my own resources and to be an example of that for others, right? Because maybe when I hold back, or when I decide to listen to myself, others are inspired to do that for themselves too. And that is an important thing. It's like a domino effect in some cases, right? This part of the individual knowing circuit is all about learning, nourishing your skills, and trusting that their expression will bring you closer to yourself and purpose. It's a creative, deeply intuitive, melancholic, and impulsive energy. It empowers you to do the work you love, creating a ripple and magnetic effect. Those that are in resonance will gravitate to you. Add on to those resources. It's fascinating because this is such an individual energy that has the potential to impact and bring abundance to those around them as well. The 214 is known as the keeper of the keys, after all. Yeah, so that is when I'm working and collaborating with somebody else, everybody benefits, right? Because now it's not just me flowing in, paying attention to my own authority. It's with the added consideration of how that affects everybody else in the bigger picture. And there's a shadow expression they're describing, and it is that the energy comes in bursts. You're here to rely on the consistency of your strategy and authority instead. The 14 oscillates between melancholy about having to work or not. It's so important for this gate to be doing work they love because it's how this energy gets activated and alchemized so it can pull in the resources you need to bring forth change and mutation. The more you lean into that, the more opportunities open up. Meaning, if I do take those invitations that aren't lighting me up inside, I'm working against myself. And since I only have a certain amount of energy, I'm going to burn myself out. When you're aligned with your design and doing the work you love to do, you will generate wealth and power. These resources are not directly for your own use, however, but yours to manage in order to empower others, to support individual creativity, charitable activities, or leaders with a vision for humanity's future. Just throwing your money, however, at anything or anyone is a poor investment. To protect your valuable life force energy from misuse or abuse by others, and to remain properly aligned in order to bring out the right mutative direction, follow your authority. Yeah, so this is interesting because you can tell just by the result where I have not acquired a lot of power or authority. Part of it is because I shied away from authority because I didn't want to own my authority because I had experienced abuse of authority. But part of that was also that I wasn't investing a lot of energy in the right invitations necessarily, right? Like I would spend a lot of time meeting up with people who weren't quite aligned, you know, not quite exactly aligned, right? And I would just kind of overlook it and say, oh, it's good enough, you know? And I'm not doing that anymore. And part of the thing that I know about myself is like I have abundance. And I've heard Bashar define abundance as the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And I have that, you know, and that is a really nice feeling compared to what I used to have, which was lack of that. And then I've felt this longing or wanting for having more than that. And that is that not only can I have what I need when I need it, but also that I have what others need when they need it. Meaning I want to provide for others. Like perhaps there are others that need to do the healing work on themselves, but they can't because they're caught up in a job to support themselves. Or people who have not been able to ground themselves onto the timeline on Earth long enough to take to be stable and able to themselves to survive in a you know a manner in which they just have their basic needs met. Like, you know, I'd like to tackle the issue of homelessness, to be honest, and things like that. I want an abundance that enables me to do that. And so in order to get that, I need to own my own authority, take up the power that I have to use these skills that I do in this way of managing resources. And these resources that I'm managing for now are my own, right? And I talked about how I needed to learn the importance of not sacrificing too much, meaning like, yes, I can feed the homeless, but also I got to make sure I can eat too. Like I shouldn't do it to the detriment of not being able to feed myself the food that I know that my body is nourished by and flourishes on, because then, you know, I throw off the whole system. So it's stuff like that. Oh, interesting. It says lessons from the gate of power skills. One of the lessons from Gate 14 is how taking care of ourselves, honoring our needs, and prioritizing our well-being are actually the keys to sustainable growth and abundance. And I think that sort of sums up exactly what I was just saying. I can't sacrifice too much of myself. You can't help others if you are drowning. You can't give from an empty tank. While many of us have been conditioned to people please, how can you slowly reclaim your life force and ground into love and worthiness? The time you're taking to nourish your passions, yourself, are the seeds to your wealth and prosperity. And I love that I'm like talking and just sharing what I know from my wisdom. And then I read this and it's the exact same thing, just worded differently. It's basically like, I don't know, it just feels nice to see that mirrored back to me, that what I've gathered and understood from this energy is something that someone else has. So it's not always so important to see a different point of view. Sometimes it's nice to see your own point of view reflected back to you. Wisdom from Gate 14. Recognizing the abundance in our gifts. We all have gifts and that are uniquely ours, no matter what design we have, and it's entirely up to us to nourish them. Yes, that's something that I have begun to start really trying to foster in others, is the recognition that what they have is theirs and they are the only one who can kind of create the space to like let it come out. You see, our energetics is not here to limit us. Every single design has exactly what it needs to be successful once they stop pushing and trying to be like everyone else. Yes, we are a divine orchestration. Our puzzle pieces are perfectly designed to fit together. So if we try to look like a different puzzle piece, then that confuses us and the pieces around us. Knowing our design can offer us insight into how we operate best so we can use our energy in a more sustainable and aligned way. Yet not every opportunity or problem and person is for us. Think of our strategy and authority as a filter that helps us discern what we do have energy for. And that's another thing. It's like, I feel like some people could understand me like owning the fact that I'm a projector, which is an advisor to others, and may like feel like, well, you don't have anything to offer me, like what you say isn't important to me, and that's okay, because if that's how you feel, then that's true for you. Like, I'm not for everyone. And that was a harder thing for me to understand earlier on, because I thought, well, it's not to like I'm a person of the people. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, well, like, what kind of a jerk would not like me? But now I allow people to dislike me in peace. They're certainly allowed to have the perspective that puts them at odds with me, and if that is what they gain from having come into contact with me, then I know that's the perfect thing that was supposed to happen for them. And the people who are drawn to what I'm saying will know that too. It's like I'm just a piece of the puzzle. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm going to fit with every other puzzle piece. It's just the pieces that are meant for me will fit with me. That's how I believe it all is. It's like, and then the whole of us, works together as this thing called humanity. The 14th gift also has another latent power, the power of attraction. Competence creates a powerful magnetic field that not only draws in the right support, but also has the ability to magnetize material wealth. This is the origin of the many folks saying about money and wealth. For example, it takes wealth to become wealthy, or wealth begets wealth. Prosperity is an infectious energy field that grows exponentially as long as it is used in the service of empowerment. Competence is unafraid of success and power, and radiates confidence and assuredness wherever it goes. It is the force field that naturally creates prosperity. It cannot do otherwise because it has so much creative power within it. It has only to find the right outlet in the world. And I gotta say that, like, my guidance, my this time that I've been to myself has been so much about me building confidence. And I think that there have been times where you wouldn't even know that I lacked confidence. And it was something that was so deep buried in me and at the foundations that, like, that ties into that wound that I talked about healing from my body at birth, which was that I couldn't breathe. If you haven't watched that video, it was basically about me talking about how when I was born, I turned blue for the first 3 days of my life, and I couldn't thrive here on earth. My energy was not able to, like, deal with the density that I was born into, basically. And I died. I kept, like, dying. um, and that, like, caused trauma, and, like, that causes an insecurity, and so there wasn't a lot of confidence um, within me at the very, very core. And actually, this other person that I've encountered and kind of made reference to as completing one of my channels, this other channel, this particular channel, in this talk, that person, I believe, shares that with me, in that at the very core of him is this insecurity. And I think with both of us, that people would not even realize it. Most people would not realize the level of insecurity within us because we present as so solid and confident. But what I've been doing is building that confidence in a way that it's actually, like, in me, in the foundation. It's like there, and I can't. And then as I did this over and over again, just like pulling my energy back up into confidence, pulling my energy back within myself and into confidence over and over for like 6 months every day. Then I realized one day that I built this stairway, and then I just went up to the top of the stairway, and my energy rested in confidence in this place where it was so different. It was like, oh, this is the place I've been able to pull myself up to for moments. But now all of a sudden I'm here, and I'm just like here, and it's not popping out, and it's not something that I took a lot of effort to do. Now it's like I'm just here. I built that space for myself over a period of time of practice, to be honest. So interesting. All right. So that was one of my nodes, right? Let's look at another node for me. So that was a subconscious node, by the way. The ability to manage my resources is something that I'm working towards, and it's something that I wasn't always aware of, right? Yeah, so true. I didn't even know that I was the well of thing consciously, but I always knew that I was trying to uncover what I was. Okay. And something that I'm unconscious of having really mastered in another lifetime, and something that I'm coming in with in this lifetime, is gate number 8. This is my south node, subconscious south node. So this is, again, part of foundation that I'm resting the other stuff on. So interesting. The other stuff was I'm resting my ability to know and to see deeply into others and working on building relationships is resting on my ability to manage resources, which is essentially the resource of my own vitality, right? The resource of my own vitality. Like learning to manage relationships while understanding and knowing deeply about other people and wanting to serve them while managing my own resources. Okay. That's where we are at so far. This is fascinating. I love this because I'm finding out so much about myself and how I operate. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm going to pause you. Okay. I noticed that in my life, there are two people that usually magnetize towards me when I'm in the zone. And when I'm in the zone is like when I'm talking about this stuff and it's kind of just flowing out of me and I'm realizing things and I'm just kind of like, flowing with the expression. And two people that always get magnetized towards me when I do that have done. There's actually a third that used to as well, but now I haven't kept her close in my life, so she probably won't. Okay. The other unconscious thing that, with my self notes, something that I'm bringing into this lifetime, is the 8 gate of contribution, expression and contribution through authenticity, the energy of individuality and courage. I resonate with this because I think just sharing this stuff publicly on my YouTube channel and everything that I used to share on my Facebook page, and just like my willingness to share my beliefs, my thoughts, the vulnerable parts of me, against what society's expectations are. I think that's all stuff that I've been doing, and that's why this resonates with me, you know? All right, let's see what it says. Starting in the Identity G Center, the hub of self, love, direction, identity, purpose, give and receive, the gate of self-expression is creative energy of the self and universe looking to be expressed. Yes, this is like letting God share through you, right? This is channeling, which reaches towards the throat, the center for voice and expression. That's where this gate is. Where 8 gate of contribution finds ways to express that uniqueness with others. Together they create the 1 through 8 channel of inspiration. So I don't have the 1, I just have the 8. Gate 8 has a magnetic quality. It naturally attracts attention and directs others to what they find innovative, unique. It is, the grammar on this is just like that. It is constantly looking for inspiration to share with others. Just like the fact that I know about human design and I'm sharing about it, like not saying that I'm an expert, just sharing my experience of looking into it and researching it and how I've resonated with it. That is what this is talking about. The fact that when I learned this or that, or when I learned I could do quantum healing, when I learned I could do this, when, I shared, like I just said, hey, there's another option here. It's like I'm the third option, it's a bridge energy. It's saying like, oh, you thought there was only 2 ways to do this. Actually, there's another one. Here's a bridge out if you'd like. I mean, just knowing that the bridge is an option can be life-changing for some people, and it had been for me. It is constantly looking for inspiration to share with others. The metaphor of the artist and the agent is often used to describe the dynamic between gate 1 and 2 and 8. I see this energy expressed throughout social media, specifically in the influencer category, where someone shares a specific product based on their values and lifestyle, right? Based on me, I'm sharing this. The gate of contribution is basically the agent looking for an artist to represent and market for. The gate 8 without the 1 might feel the pressure to be creative themselves, searching for leadership, creative qualities in others. And I have succumbed to feeling that pressure to be creative myself. In fact, I have such great ideas, and I have tried to line up and collaborate with certain people to help me execute these ideas because they're so fucking good. 2 in particular that I'm thinking of that I wanted to collaborate with others to create. Oh, there's a third one coming to mind right now. 3 ideas that I know should be in this world, and that I don't have the resources to create at this time. But if I could collaborate with somebody else, we could do this together because I have this wonderful idea which needs to be created into the world. So that's kind of highlighting what I see as like this lack of having the 1. So perhaps I will meet up with someone who completes the channel for me at some point, and then create these things, these 3 creative things that I have in mind that I know would be life-changing for many people. Located in the throat, this is a projected gate. Not everyone will find what you share valuable or necessarily interesting. It doesn't mean it isn't. Being recognized and invited to share with the right people and places is how this energy moves and create a lasting impact that mutates. A big theme for Gate 8 is learning when it's time to contribute and when it isn't, leaning into your strategy and authority for cues on the timing. You're here to contribute by being a role model in living authentically. Let the magnetism of your authenticity pull in the opportunities on when and what to engage with. Right. So this is saying, like, it's not necessarily about me being the one to create these things. It's about me, like, navigating, like, oh, is this something I want to engage with? Is this something I should amplify? Is this something that is interesting and innovative? Is this something that feels right to me? Even though the gate of contribution is here to be radically different and stand out from the crowd, it can feel a little bit lonely. Yeah, like I said, there's no one that is exactly where I'm at. um, you know, and that's probably fine. I just have to understand the way to relate with that. And I'm, like I said, I'm still working on that. Being part of the individual knowing circuit, it's here to impact the collective through personal empowerment. It also goes through periods of melancholy, feeling no one is listening or that their contributions are unimportant. I've definitely experienced that. Probably less, I mean, definitely less often than I used to, but probably, like, I'm still figuring out how to learn from those moments because I don't think I've mastered going through melancholy. There's still part of me that forgets and doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Whereas I have found gifts. There's a video that I have out there, the gift that I found in my melancholy. I mean, there are wonderful reasons why I should let myself go into that space in a more allowing way at times. But sometimes I've been on such a roll and I've been feeling so great, and it's like to come into a space of melancholy just feels like someone just put out my fire. Like, and I want my fire back. You know what I mean? But there's also this ebb and flow of the way my energy even works. So if I can go into some melancholy, and actually what I've been thinking is perhaps there's more creativity that can uh, be spurred from that space where I can use that melancholy for creation rather than wallowing or resting, which is what I usually end up doing. And when I say wallowing, it's not like a wallowing poor me. It's like a wallowing like, yeah, challenge, like that. Like acting as if challenge wasn't just part of it, you know? It's like looking at your thumb and being like, yeah, this is just a thumb. It's like, no, a thumb is part of it. It's a very important part of it. It moves this way when the other things move that way. That's what melancholy needs to be more embraced by me, like, because it is part of my design. The shadow aspect, it fears being rejected for being different, so it suppresses its spirit and uniqueness. I've definitely done that, and I definitely sometimes still do that because I'll have an opinion or a point of view that is so contrary to what the entire rest of everybody in the room is doing. And I think maybe what I just realized when I said that was this is how I was. And that's because I hadn't yet cleared that wounding that I talked about in the first hour of this, where I had that abuse of authority wound. And so now that I've cleared the abuse of authority wound, I think now it won't be as intimidating to look at the truth of things and then, be in the face of a bunch of people who don't get it and then still express myself authentically. I think now I will be faced with some opportunities to do that. And I will do that, and I'll see what that's like now without that fear looming over me of feeling powerless, like I did because it was a wound anchored in to me from my previous experiences that I had not yet alchemized, which I just alchemized yesterday, so I forgot about that. And see, sometimes it's habit to think in a certain way, but I did clear that energy, and I just remembered it when I said that. So I got new experiences upcoming, right? Remember, you are the breath of fresh air that many are waiting for. Not everyone, but many. When you embrace your truth, you quietly pull others in to follow. And I think my truth is often found in the contrary to popular belief place, you know? So many times it's been that. And that has been so sad for me sometimes. You know, it's like, why do I gotta swim in the opposite direction? But you know that meme with all the sheep just like jumping off the cliff because everyone's going in the same direction, and I'm the sheep going in the other direction, the opposite direction, and it's like everyone else is like going that way, and I have to go against the grain, be different. I have to look weird to every single person I pass.